Howdy there, YouTube. This is T Walker, aka Tanner. I'm gonna do a discussion today about stats versus skills. So, give a really quick rundown of my resolution system. When you attempt any check, let's use lockpicking because it's an easy example. You're gonna roll 2 stats and then your skill dice. So, I'm Bob the Rogue and I go to attempt to pick the lock. Since I have 3 in my lockpicking skill, I get to choose, or I have dice, and I'm trained in lockpick. I get to choose which stat dice I want to roll to pick a lock. And the reason I did that was because I was thinking, okay, not everyone is going to pick a lock in the same way, and you should be able to choose, or if you're picking a lock, you're going to do it in a way that works best for you, which means you're going to use your best stat dice to do it, because you're trained in it. And I thought that made sense. However, let's finish the thing. So, I've got my stat dice, say, I'm using Reflex, which for Bob the Rogue is a D8, and I'm using, I don't know, Reflex and Awareness, which for Bob the Rogue is a D6. So, I roll these both together, and what I got a 7. Well, that's great, because all it takes to pass a skill check is 6, and you automatically pass. But, let's say the lock has a complication level of 2. Alright, well I have a skill of 3 in it, which means instead of rolling the 3 skill dice I would normally roll, I'd roll 1 skill dice. Right? And as you can see, I got a 3. And so what skill dice do, on a roll of 1 to 2, they do nothing. On a roll of 3, 4, or 5, they give you a minor event. On a roll of 6, they give you 2 minor events or a major event. So I got a 3, 1 minor event, and I passed the check. They could also buff up my my score if I had gotten like a 5 or something. I could use this to give me a bonus 1 and then pass the check. It allows me to take control of the narrative and add on an event. So I go to pick the door, or pick the lock on the door. This 7 says that I do it. I say, okay. And with this skill dice, I pick the lock, and I pick it so no one hears me. That's how I changed the situation a little bit, because I got that minor event for my skill dice roll. So, what got me kind of thinking about this was the fact that if you're trained in something, you get to choose which stat dice you use, which means you could just pump the hell out of those 2 stat dice and pretty much forget about everything else. What it does is it makes some stats useless, which you never want. Now I know what you could say, I could, assign each skill, these are the 2 stat dice you have to use for the skill. But balancing that out is not easy, and also players are like, but I don't want my character to do it in that way, I want him to do it in this way, which is a problem for me. So, I remember in Aaron's system that he was making, I think he gave up on it, or he did give up on it, but I thought it was pretty cool. He said that he had no skills. It was all based on your stats. If you were trying to, lift a rock, that was a strength check. If you were trying to, shoot a bow and arrow, that was a dexterity check. Something like that. No skills, just stats, which I thought was pretty cool. But I was thinking maybe doing the opposite. No stats, only skills. Because, like I said, what I've been having problems with is the fact that you get to choose your 2 stats, which just pretty much means you make your best roll, and you leave these other stats to not do anything with. Whereas if it was just based off skills, you could describe how you do it any way you want, because that would just be flavor now. And you could, for example, the 2 people I would use would be like, you got Andre the Giant, and you've got your Kid Assassin. Both have a 5 in combat, but their flavor is very different. The Child Assassin's combat comes from his and damage, because that's what combat's gonna do, extra damage. Comes from his knowledge of where to strike the opponent, where to slice him, the attack that's going to deal the most damage to his opponent. Whereas, Andre the Giant's combat score just comes from his sheer size. He's just whacking at you, but his flavor is that he, is just really big, and that's why he has such a high combat score. So, that would be a way to do it, but I'm unsure if I want to do it that way, because there are some drawbacks. For example, in my system, some stats give you certain things. For example, willpower determines how much energy your energy pool, pretty much. Your aptitude determines the size of your mind. It's your mental health. And other ones have various functions. In order to start initiative, you roll reflex plus awareness. So that's something to think about too. But what I want is your guys' feedback. What do you think? Do you think I should take out stats and have this system be run completely on skills? Or should I keep this kind of stat and skill combo? Now, I gave you an example of how the stats and skills work. Let me give you an example of how just skills would work. So let's do the same thing. I attempt to lockpick. I go to lockpick the door. I have a skill of 3, right, in it. The door has a challenge rating of 2, so I get to roll a dice. Right? So I roll my 1 skill dice, and I got a 5, meaning yes, I succeed. Now I know there's a little bit of flaws in that, but that would be pretty much the way it's run. Most likely, I would treat all your skills as having at least 1 dice in them. So whenever you'd make a roll, you'd always make at least, or you'd always be considered to have 1 dice in that. But so say it was a 0 complexity lock, and it still required a check. And I had no skills in lockpick, I'd still get to roll 1 dice. Something like that would be how I would run it. But what sounds better to you? Should I keep the stats with the skills and have that resolution I had, or do you think it would be better? Does that sound better to you guys as players to just dump the stats and have a completely skill system? All right. Anyway. This has been T Walker, aka Tanner, talking to you guys about skills versus stats, and I am signing off.